This is To Catch a Conman, Season 2, In the Victim's Voices. I will take you on another fascinating journey, but this time you will hear from other men and women that, like me, have fallen prey to the various cons, scams, and deceits by one of the most prolific and successful con artists to live and operate in the Midwest. You know him as Ricky Dugo.
Could $100,000 sustain my life? It couldn't even come close. So listen to me. If I was going to be in some sort of con, scam, conniving thing, it'd be for millions. It wouldn't be for $100,000.
To Catch a Conman is brought to you by Studio 847 in Long Grove, Illinois. Listener discretion is advised, as some of this programming contains language and content that might be offensive to some listeners.
Join me on this adventure to catch a conman. This is Adam Albin. On this next episode of To Catch a Conman, In the Victim's Voices, during the summer of 2018, I met with Lake County and provided them with a list of victims whom had been conned by Ricky Dugo. This next interview is with a Lake County detective and investigator that worked on the case for over 2 years. You'll hear in his words how chasing Ricky Dugo snowballed out of control, interviewing victims all over this country. Let's meet Detective Bill Bain. We're sitting here with Detective Bill Bain. Bill was instrumental in his investigative work that he provided in 2018, specifically to helping to take down Ricky Dugo. How are you, Detective Bill? It's been a long time.
Adam, it's been a long time. Thanks. It's great. I'm doing great.
Good.
Happily retired.
That's amazing. You're enjoying it, huh? Playing a lot of golf.
Traveling, playing golf, doing all the things I want to do.
That's awesome. So let's go back to 2018. It's the summer. I call you on the phone, or I should say, I go into Vernon Hills, the police department. I file a police report. They give me the Lake County State's Attorney's investigative number, the general phone number. You call me the next day. In the conversation that we had, I had explained to you what I had known at the time. I was like 6 or 7 days into investigating Rick. You had mentioned at first that it really sounded more civil from what you had heard, and that was totally understandable. What were your first impressions of that phone call? Do you happen to remember that?
Well, yeah, I do remember the call, Adam. And my first impressions were, this is somebody we should talk to, at least to, because I knew that you were getting the runaround from Vernon Hills and other places. And I knew that that's the kind of case that our office deals with. Local police departments, they kind of shy away from doing fraud cases because they do feel that, maybe it's a civil matter. These were business agreements or other agreements that you entered into somebody, investments, what have you, that, there are no guarantees that your investments are going to make you money and things of that nature.
Sure.
So, we looked at it, and I talked to my boss, Fred Day, and obviously I set an appointment for you to come in to meet with me and Fred at our office, and that's what happened.
Tell me a little bit about what your background is. What was your title? What were you doing? What were some of the normal things that you were investigating with your title?
Well, my background is I was a Waukegan police officer for 32 years. I was retired as chief of police in 2009, went to work as a chief investigator for the Lake County State's Attorney's Office. My job in particular, my specialty was things like elder abuse, thefts from organizations, voter fraud, things of that nature. I did a lot of those types of investigations, but it could be anything. We assisted in anything from homicides to, frauds like yours.
Okay. So we set up an appointment for like 2 days later. I come into your, into the office. I don't know if you remember, David's with me.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he walks me up. We sit down with, I remember it being you and 88 Fred Day. And we start to talk things over. I read you a letter. Dear Detective Bang, please take this very seriously. And we start to go over what I had known at the time and what I had uncovered. In hearing that initial conversation, was there something that like grabbed you in and you were like, holy moly, maybe there's something bigger here?
Not initially. I think, investigators are always skeptical. That's in our nature. We're always thinking, okay, what's this going to be about? And we were skeptical at first. We heard your story. Obviously, we listened to you. And I think as you talked and we continued to discuss and we looked at the number of victims, the number of people that you had found and that you had made contact with, that it needed further investigation.
It opened your eyes.
It did. There was no expectation that this was going to go as far or as long as it did. We thought this would be a relatively quick, let's look at this. We'll take a quick look. If we can make anything of it, great. If not, that's the way it goes. But as things went on and we looked at the numbers and the people that we talked to and the number of victims and the types of victims, it opened our eyes. And we really decided that this was a case that we were going to attack. Because some of the victims, not so much like you, but some of the victims were young kids who were just getting started in life, that this guy destroyed their credit ratings, destroyed their lives, turned them into, debtors for the rest of their lives because they went into these agreements with him to buy him cars, to sign for motorcycles, to do all kinds of things that, it was clear that they had no idea what they were getting into. And they were talking about 21, 22, 3-year-old girls that he met at a weight room, at a workout facility. Other people that he had befriended, that he had talked to, that he'd given his line of baloney.
You can swear.
I don't want to.
You can swear. You can say whatever you want.
I know, but and it just from his landlord in Libertyville to his neighbors that we spoke with, everybody had the same story. It was just Ricky's con, and Ricky it was clear to us after a very short time that this guy needed to go to jail, and that was our goal, was to get him into the system somehow.
So, you mentioned some things that are interesting. Let's talk about in the initial part of your investigation. You guys probably run some background checks. Has he been arrested in Illinois? Who's opened files on him in the past? I believe DuPage County had. I believe at some point Cook County may have had something on him. Where did this investigation take you?
Well, of course, we dug into his background. We found out about his felony arrest in Ohio, and that case, and we just kept digging and digging into the background. We looked into his civil cases. We found more actual information from lawsuits that were filed against him, civil cases, than necessarily from, you know, the investigations from DuPage and other places, because there really wasn't much done. There really wasn't a lot of follow-up done, because I think they felt like a lot of other people, well, these are guys that are going into some kind of business agreement that they should have known better. You know, it's when you invest in something, you make a deal, you go in and somebody tells you, you know, I'm going to do this for you. And it's the old, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is.
For sure.
And that's what a lot of departments, a lot of agencies look at, and they say, okay. But I don't think they went into it with the depth and breadth that we did. And a lot of that had to do with some of the things that you did, you know, to put together lists and find other victims and reach out to people. And that assisted us a great deal.
So, you had mentioned that you had talked to a lot of victims. How many victims, or how many people did Lake County find? How many people did you interview that were victims? How many people were on that list I've always wanted to see?
I would venture to say 30, at least, maybe more. Mm-hmm. And every time we turned the corner, we found new victims. So every time we'd interview one person, they'd say, talk to this guy or talk to this girl. You find, you know, they got ripped off too. So it just kept snowballing. And to give you an accurate number, you know, I don't still have any of my reports or any of that sort of thing to give you a total number, but there were a lot of victims, dating back to the 80s.
Detective Tony Thies at one point verbally told me they had a list of about 170 something. Does that sound accurate, or is that more victims and potentially people?
Well, there were at least 100 and some people that we spoke with. Oh, I'm guessing 170 people that we interviewed. Now, whether they were all officially victims or not is, you know, Tony knows. Tony knows this case inside out and backwards. I would not question a thing he said. I guarantee if he said 170, that's accurate.
Great. Let's talk about where this investigation took you. You went out of state a few times. What were you doing?
Interviewing victims.
Right.
For the most part, I went to Las Vegas. I went to Arizona. Tony and I went to North Carolina, and interviewed.
Yep.
And he was one of the most damaged guys out there that had gotten damaged financially, I should say, by what Dugo did to him. I mean, he was just devastated.
Yeah,
devastated. His life was turned upside down, and you can pretty much credit all the bad things that happened to him, I think, to Ricky Dugo.
Sure.
Dugo did not care anything. He went and picked up in the hospital after surgery, took him to the bank to have him withdraw money.
Yeah.
You know.
That's sick.
It's just, you know, he was in the hospital. He literally took him out of the hospital to the bank so he could withdraw a certain amount. I forget the number. But took him to the bank to withdraw money.
Right.
And then took him back to the hospital and put him back in bed.
It's unbelievable.
That just kind of goes over the line. Far over the line.
I would agree with that. Missouri, at one point, had opened at least an investigation. I have never been successful with having any conversation with Anthony Williams, the investigator. Anybody in that office. Nobody's returned any of my calls. When Dorothy Tucker went down to Missouri to look into this, they claimed they never heard of a Rick Dugo. So tell me a little bit about your time in Missouri. What happened?
Well, we never actually went to Missouri.
Okay.
We never went to the Ozarks where he had been the boat, stealing boats and ripping off people down there. There were numerous victims down there. There were people who had been violated by Rick Dugo a lot down there. And we reached out, we talked to them, we talked to the U.S. attorney, the district attorney, I guess it was, in that county. And they just never really followed up. And I think it's the same kind of thing. Well, you know, you make a deal with somebody and you don't get your money, you know, too bad. You know, you're just a sour loser. But there were people who clearly he would rent places down there, never intended to pay any rent. which he never did in his entire life, as far as I can find, unless he was going to get evicted and he needed to just delay the eviction for a couple of months. But
so you think entities or investigative units like the Attorney General in Missouri, when Russell Fisk, who he goes there with a list of 22 victims, that's not enough for them to even really dig into a case. I mean, again, I get it. It's shame on you. You should have known better. But that's like a one-to-one thing, right? But if you have all of these people and you have this this pattern, we'll call it, right?
Well, that's clearly what we saw. We clearly immediately saw this pattern developing from, like you said, from Missouri to Ohio to Michigan to Florida. I mean, there were victims everywhere.
Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana, obviously, yes. And so we were all over the place. And then we saw this, and we really thought, well, maybe this should be a federal investigation, not a local investigation. So we reached out, got some assistance from the FBI, but even they did not want to go into this either. And why, I don't know. I can't tell you why. Maybe it didn't reach the threshold of something that they have thresholds for investigations, and it's up to the individual U.S. attorney and the individual FBI office to make those decisions, and I'm not part of those decisions. We had assistance. We did have federal agents working with us on this case, but it never got to the point where they were going to open a federal investigation, which in my opinion, it should have been, because there were so many. This thing stretched all around the country, and so we did it ourselves. We didn't, we knew that if we were going to do this, after we reached out to enough places, even the local department, that this was going to be something that this was ours and ours alone.
Yeah, I find that so interesting. The FBI actually was contacted 2 prior times.
Right.
Andrew, as well as Mr. And they always said, no matter how much was stolen or taken or given to him, even though this is all, again, under this framework of theft by deception, that he just wasn't a big enough whale. He wasn't a big enough fish. I find that so disappointing, because if the FBI would have done something and opened a case, there would have been background information at some point that maybe they had filed charges, and maybe the folks that came after that wouldn't have been, victims at all. And it's the same thing for Missouri. If Missouri digs in, in 2016, 2017, and they actually put together a case and do what they're supposed to do and follow up on these things, people like me don't happen.
Right.
So.
Right. No, that's true. And or you would hope they wouldn't have.
Hope.
But not. But again, these are cases that there's 18 victims here, 5 victims here, 1 victim here, 4 victims here. Not everybody, they don't always put the, maybe not the energy, the effort to go digging deeper. Absolutely, it was a huge, huge case. There, like you said, hundreds of victims, and probably some that we don't even still today know about.
I guarantee
you.
Guarantee it.
And I imagine if he could con people in prison, he'd be conning people outside of prison to go give money to his wife, whatever she is. So it's a difficult for me to explain. These are cases that kind of fall in the cracks of, is it civil? Is it not? You asked for it. You should. It's too good to be true. It sounds too good to be true. It probably is. People get conned a lot, and not a lot of people always call the police. There are people in his neighborhood. They never call the police. This guy got got ripped off for $4,000. I'll double it in a week. Well, guess what? That ain't happening. And that's your next door neighbor. His next door neighbor.
Oh, I know.
And it's just people always if he goes to the cops, he sounds like a dope. He's thinking these are successful people that should know. That maybe they should know better. Maybe they shouldn't. First of all, he wasn't ripping off guys on that were broke.
No.
He was ripping off guys who had some wherewithal and an ability to pay. And he has a way, he had a knack for getting close to people, for endearing himself to people. And I'll tell you, people liked him. You know, the people initially, they liked him. They were going to his party. They were godparents to his kids before they got ripped off. And it's too bad. It's a shame. You know, but he didn't get away with this because he was bad at it. He was pretty good at it.
Yeah, and we'll go into that in a second. So statistically speaking, 10% of all white-collar crime, 10% of victims actually file a police report. In my estimation, with the victims that I talked to, which was over 100, less than 5 actually either went to the FBI or to the police at some point. It's interesting that so many people internalize this. They don't know that that a serial con man or a career criminal of sorts is actually, they think that they're all alone, I guess is what I'm saying. They think that it's just happening to me. And then there's the embarrassment and shame. They don't want to go to the police and explain that they were duped, that they made a terrible decision.
And that's probably clearly why only 5 out of 100 went to the police.
Right. Compared to other, so in your work as an investigator, as a police officer, a police chief, how prevalent are conning and scammers in this area? I mean, is that something that happens a lot?
Well, we dealt with all types of different scams. I mean, we dealt with elder abuse. We dealt with, there are con men everywhere. There's a way to make money off of somebody. I mean, you're a computer expert. You know what people do over the computers and how they try to get you. They send you these things that look like it's from your bank. And so this is the Bank of America. We need to redo your credit. Your bank information. Your bank information. Please give us your social security number. And people fall for this all the time, and it's over and over and over again. I mean, I dealt with so many different types of cons. The insurance cons, the grandfather scam. All these different things that people would get ripped off. Then somebody from out of the country saying, I'm Johnny, your grandson. I need money to get out of jail. Will you send me money to California? To Canada? You got to go to that Western Union station at the Kmart or the Walgreens and send the money. Otherwise, it won't work. And these people fall for it all the time. We had, gypsy scams. People would knock on the doors. They would do your driveway, and while they're showing you the problems with your driveway or your roof, there's somebody going in the back door. I had 2 people get ripped off within 2 weeks of each other. They were the same person. Had $80,000 in cash stolen from their house, and then 2 weeks later, another 40. They were elderly people. They were women. They had, they felt like they had to have cash in their house. They had a lot of money because they were successful, in their jobs and had made millions of dollars at Avid Lab and profit sharing or what have you. And they got ripped off. And these, they just kept that money in their house. And the gypsy said, okay, if they did it once, maybe we can go back again. I had a little old guy, a nice old man. He got the lottery scam. We won the lottery. We can't cash it because we're not U.S. citizens. Can you cash it for us? And can you? If you give us $18,000, we'll give you the ticket. Okay, and he gave him the $18,000, and the ticket was worth nothing. And it was a fraudulent ticket. These kinds of things happen all the time, the time. And it's rare that you can get a good enough description. Now it's different now because back then, they would actually take them to the bank, And now, there was video recordings of everybody's, and now you have a little better shot. The police have a little better shot at least seeing who the offender is in a lot of these cases. But they're everywhere. The state police had, ruse burglary task forces for years because they know that this is going on all the time. But senior citizens are getting ripped off. Not just senior citizens, all kinds of people, for some reason or another, find these things and they fall for it and they get ripped off. And it's that, or maybe it's the treasurer for the Little League, who's been paying their bills with the Little League, money. We have all kinds of things. So there's all kinds of different cases like that.
I'll give you the number. personal fraud and like commercial fraud is between 40 to $100 billion a year in the United States in losses. So it really is kind of eye-opening. So what happened like when you went out to Las Vegas? What was that victim like? I know it was.
She was one of the young girls that had given him met him at the gym. Ricky befriended her, said he was going to help her build up her credit score. I can really help you. You know, took her to the Harley Davidson place. They bought 2 Harley Davidson, put it in her name, and Ricky never made a payment. And so she was just, you know, it was, I don't know, $40,000 worth of motorcycles at the time. And Ricky never made a payment. Ricky and one of his buddies drove the motorcycles until they got, you know, caught.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Okay. Was there anything on these little trips that you went on with Detective Thies? Is there anything that was surprising? Did anything kind of like? I guess is there anything that was so that like just blew your mind at how good he was at getting away with this?
Well, I don't know that it was that case. I think more, you know, just looking at some of the victims were really successful, high up in businesses that should have known better. I mean, in our opinion, not known better, but should have. Maybe the light should have gone. You'd think, well, why didn't the light go on? You know, after all this money and all these times he's taken, wouldn't you finally say, hey, screw you, I'm not giving you anymore at some point?
Yeah.
But, you know, that and then that's not just from the trips of, you know, to other places. You know, I went to Vegas and Arizona on my own. Tony and I went to North Carolina, but and we went to Southern Illinois. We went to St. Louis. We were all over the place because he had victims, associates that we had to interview. They were all ended up being victims. There were a few people. What surprised us was there were a few people that just would not cooperate. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were. I don't know why. When we went to Indiana, the people just refused to cooperate with us, and they were victims. He was using their name to get houses, to fraudulently apply for loans, not loans, but rent, and to assign them the lease. So there were all kinds of things he was doing, and they wouldn't, and they had expensive sports cars that they had bought for Ricky.
Yeah,
it was a little Nissan, whatever they call that thing.
GTR.
A GTR, and then the other people were getting them the Dodge Vipers. Was it a Viper? No.
No,
I'm trying to remember the type
the
of car.
granddaughter went in on an F-350 pickup truck.
Yeah, but then there was another one up here where they bought him a fancy Dodge sports car.
Yeah, that was a Viper. He had a Viper.
Yeah, a Dodge Viper or something like that. I don't remember all the details of each particular vehicle, but and pickup trucks, Cadillacs, Escalades, Mercedes-Benz, Jeeps, you name it, he had people getting them for him.
Right. So like when you start to look at everything that he's been able to accomplish, he's got motorcycles, boats, cars, houses, cash. I mean, he's running the gamut. Nothing is off limits to this guy. I mean, at what point for you?
Rolex watches.
Yeah, that was a huge one.
That was a huge part.
Talked about that one last night. Yeah.
The Rolex watch was a huge scam. Get me this roll, sign for this roll, and he'd take it down to the jeweler's row and pawn them. Right. And get maybe half what they're worth.
Exactly.
And that's all he cared about. And he had guys doing that all the time.
Right.
That was a big thing with Tiffany. I think he was at Tiffany's a lot in Old Orchard.
And CD Peacock was
another. And Peacock was another one. Yeah,
and he was
Peacock.
going
that
down,
was the one I was thinking of. It wasn't Tiffany. It was Peacock.
And he was going down to Howard Fromm in Jewelers Row.
Yes.
And he'd have David would take the Rolexes and pawn them off, and then bring Ricky all the cash.
Ricky would do it himself too.
Yeah, that was a huge one. He got Graf for that same thing.
Yep.
Rolexes was to pay off the alderman for the zoning rights to a car wash. I mean, this guy was really good. I mean, are you guys thinking there's no way he can be this good? I'm trying to understand from law enforcement.
I think that from our perspective, and obviously it's maybe not the appropriate way to think about it, but we all think about, why are people so stupid to do this stuff for them? I mean, that's what we're thinking. We're thinking, come on, this guy, buy me a Rolex watch. What computes here? I don't get it. Why you would do that? Why would you give him, $4,000? Oh, I'll double it in a week. Baloney. You're not going to double it in a week. No, it's just like, come on. But it's not just what shocked us was all these people were pretty successful. Business owners, businessmen, people who you thought would just say, screw you, asshole. I'm not doing that. But he was good at it. He had to be good at it because he had a way of he had only one guy. He took him he'd just gotten into a new house. And one guy, can't remember his name. He took Ricky, and he'd already been victimized. He took Ricky to a furniture store and wanted him to sign for all of his furniture. And he finally just said, screw you, I'm not doing it. No, the only guy that I can remember that, and there may be others, because you can't do this. You're not batting 1,000 every time you do this. You're getting, you're being successful. There were people that I'm sure told them to go scratch, but the only one that we talked to was a guy from Libertyville that took him over. He took him over to the furniture store. We forget which one. And he was going to get a house full of furniture, and he wanted this guy to sign for him because he didn't want his ex-wife to find out about it or some baloney. That was his big one. Well, I'm getting divorced. It's my ex-wife. I don't need her to know about me getting this car. So can I put it in your name? Come on. Who does that?
Yeah. It was successful. He was successful at that one more than once. And,
lots of times.
Yeah. And
lots of times.
And any time they were evicted, they would be going on Marketplace and selling all the furniture and taking the profit.
Absolutely.
Did you ever have a conversation with his sister?
I don't remember specifically. I believe we went and interviewed her, and she told us to pound sand.
And you found that many. Let's go back to, you had mentioned how many people were uncooperative. There were many.
There were a lot of uncooperative. Some that were hesitant, some that had just, their whole life the guy had ruined. And they just didn't want to revisit it. They had gotten themselves back on their feet after these many years of struggling with their, credit ratings and all the other things. They'd lost their savings, their mother's life savings, on some car wash scam or whatever it was. And they were devastated. These people were just devastated by this stuff. They called him the devil. He was, absolutely, this guy is the devil. And anything he touches, anywhere he goes, there's going to be victims. And they were right.
Yeah. Do you believe that he had accomplices? People like these helpers, the Miss Kowskis, the Mr. Grants?
Absolutely. There were some people who helped him. And I'm still, I still wonder. The Grant fella, we've never found out that he was a victim. He never told us he was a victim.
He wasn't.
And do you really know that? Do you really know that? I don't know that Bowski, I think she was a victim. I think she was a victim. I think it turned into, because obviously she was a victim because she'd bought cars and
but she
was on the rent.
Like 2 or 3 times she had houses. Dick Duran's house, the former Chicago Bear head coach's house.
Right.
That's the lease.
Right. So she clearly was a victim. But why she wouldn't cooperate, why she kept helping this guy is beyond me. I don't know what she got from him. Maybe we'll never know because, she wouldn't cooperate. And the same way with the people in Indiana.
Yeah.
The people in Indiana, they wouldn't cooperate. The grandmother, the girl that worked for Purdue University, we went and interviewed her in her office.
Yeah.
She wanted nothing to do with us.
I've emailed her many times.
No. You'll never get anything out of her.
So what about fraud? So I know that this would be something that was probably out in Indiana. But what I saw on these credit applications when they were initially denied, and this is specific to like the Nissan GTR. So the grandma goes, and this grandma in Indiana, she goes out and tries to put a GTR in her name for Rick. Okay, She goes out there, she applies for credit, it gets denied. Rick forges a letter with using Jeff Klein's company, the concrete company,
yeah.
and writes a personal letter on that letterhead stating that so and so is an employee making an extra $8,000 a month. I can vouch for her. And goes ahead, submits the fraudulent letter. The bank approves the loan. He's driving around a car that is years later has never been repossessed. It's never been found.
Right.
So where did that go?
That's an exact good question. There's another Dodge, whatever it was. It was a different kind of. Well, it wasn't a Viper. It was I can't think of the name of the car. But I'm not a big car guy. But it was it looked like a Dodge Charger, Challenger, whatever. Yeah, I forget what the really expensive one is.
Yeah, the Hellcat.
$100,000 Hellcat. That's what it is.
Yeah, Hellcat.
There's a Hellcat out there somewhere too.
That's never been found.
That's never been found. I don't.
Whose name is that in?
Mike Wazowski. It might be in her name.
What I found that's so interesting.
I'm not sure, but I don't quote me on that. But
yeah.
I mean,
okay.
I'm not. I don't have the, all those facts right in. I'm not an encyclopedia like Tony Theus is.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him to sit down with me as well.
Yeah, he'd be a good interview.
So.
Because he knows this case inside out and back, and he was working on it for a year after I left,
Yeah. So.
Or more.
Why do you think there was such a significant lag from the time that I present you with this, we'll call it a file folder of information, and I remember specifically you saying, we're going to get them, don't worry about it, and as things kind of went on, you're like, I knew you were worried about your impending retirement, because you're like, I retire in a year. Hopefully we get this wrapped up in a year. And I'm thinking, we got to get it wrapped up,
Yeah.
So...
there's always delays. There's changes in management in our office, changes in our supervisors. That some, were more aggressive than others, and some really wanted to go after it. And finally, when Kevin Barrell got a hold of it in our office, it went somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin is a great lawyer, great attorney, and he did a great job with this, for what he had. You got to remember, a lot of the things you're talking about, too, like the things in Indiana and the things in Michigan, they were out of our jurisdiction.
For sure.
That's why we thought, let's get the feds involved. Let's get them, involved in something, because you got all this bank fraud going on with all these loans, all this stuff, and you thought they would have gone after them.
Yeah,
they didn't.
Not only, you've got bank fraud, you have wire fraud.
All the different things.
So, But why? I mean, so again, I know that you're not the FBI, but that's what's so, almost alarming, is what do you have to do to get on their radar for a white-collar crime perspective? Is it more you need to embezzle $1 million from a company? Because those people seem to get caught left and right.
I don't think it would be that hard for them to put together a case on this, even if but now you've got statutes of limitations, all these other things that have gone by the wayside that they may not be able to revisit these cases because there's no way to prosecute them. And I'm sure the Attorney General or the U.S. attorneys that are their bosses are saying, that's just, you got all these little victims, it's too hard of a case. You got to do the federal case, you've got so many tentacles on this investigation from every state that we've talked about, and so many victims. It's a massive, massive undertaking. What Tony did, and me to a certain extent, was a massive undertaking, a massive organizational thing, just to get a couple of the cases charged. Not many. I mean, we didn't do a lot. I mean, we didn't charge every case.
There was definitely some cases that dropped off due to statutes of limitations, and they're easily, in my opinion, you had probably 3 to 5 victims that were within that 2016, 2017 range, that by the time the charges were filed, that had fallen off.
There were more victims than that.
Yeah, and I think that would have made a really large difference. And this is why, because if we would have had 8 total people instead of 3 initially, and then a 4th added later. All of a sudden, he would have gone from 6 charges potentially to 12, 18 charges.
Well, we would, our thought, mine and Tony's, mine more than probably than Tony's, but we thought there's got to be some way to tie all these cases together, and maybe the statute of limitations, a continuing criminal conspiracy type of thing, where he's continuing to go on and on and on, or enterprise, whatever you want to call it, so that we could charge him with some kind of a case that we could reach back to the 80s and charge him with all the different things that he did. But I guess we should be lucky that we got what we did. It's unfortunate, but it's just such a massive undertaking. I don't know that most agencies, offices are equipped to do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
To put the massive amount of time that one of these cases like this, that's why, again, we had, we talked to the IRS, we talked to the FBI, we talked to, everybody, and it's a lot of hard legwork time to put a case like this together.
Does Ricky Dugo file taxes?
I don't think he's ever filed in this. I don't know. I don't believe so. As far as I know, he doesn't.
Or
hasn't.
And the IRS was not interested in this at all.
Well, I got to tell you this: the IRS could have an investigation going right now, and we wouldn't know about it.
Got it.
So could the FBI. The FBI could be looking into this, and we wouldn't know about it, and that's fine. All we wanted to do was get them interested in doing this case, so that victims could be, made, not made whole, but at least given, some satisfaction that he didn't walk away without any type of punishment.
No,
the guy should be doing 20 years in a federal prison.
For sure.
In my mind.
That's all. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. And I don't want you to think that I'm not appreciative. I think if you know, I'm your biggest fan. Tony and Kevin Barrow was a bulldog, and he was up against some staunch competition in that courtroom. I mean,
oh yeah, those are good lawyers.
Dugo had one of the best in Chicago. That's represented Jesse Jackson Jr. and he just represented one of the ComEd 4, a guy that doesn't lose often. So you think he should have gotten 20 years in a federal?
Well, in a perfect world,
yeah,
that's what would have happened, and he certainly deserves some serious jail time for all of the different victims that he's put through hell. He should have gotten more than that.
Is there anything that stands out in this case? I mean, is there anything that what sort of things that do I not know? Well,
I don't. Well, the things that you don't know are the back stories of things that happened, that people we interviewed, and the discussions that we had trying to get charges filed a couple of years ago. And they just never materialized for whatever reasons. So those are the things that you don't know. But it's nothing out of the, there's no cases that you haven't probably heard about. No victims, because you're pretty good about following up on who the victims were and reaching out to them and contacting them, and so that's but that's the biggest thing. I mean, the people that you don't know, And there were some people that were talking to us other than you about this case that helped us a lot in this investigation too. I mean, there were other people beside other victims who had information that, a couple of them that come to mind that really helped a lot. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to have their name brought up in this.
No. Which is
they want to stay out of it. But they were very cooperative, and they helped, and they were good citizens, and they worked with the state's attorney's office, law enforcement, to try to make sure that this guy got what he had coming.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think that you know this. I think that you know that I relied heavily on a lot of the backstory information, the history that I didn't know from a confidant that I still to this day don't know his name. I have never wanted...
And I won't tell you.
I don't want to know his name. I want to always keep him as this angel that was with me on my shoulder.
Right.
And I don't want to... what's the right word? I just don't ever want to know his name. I feel like that would take away from what we built.
Yep.
Yep. What did you bring here with you? What do you got?
These are just some of the background information that I have. You know, some notes that I have from the case.
Yeah. Is there anything that talks in there about his upbringing? Did you ever learn anything about, you know, how old was he when he had his first con? Because I know that like one of his high school girlfriends got conned out of like $500 for a car, and then it just seemed like he had a really easy time preying on these women, a lot of women that fell in love with him. He was so charming, they were so enamored by him, and then they felt hook, line, and sinker, not only in love with him, where you have an emotional component, but then he, you know, fucked them all over and stole all of their money.
And stole from their parents,
parents.
Sisters and brothers and whoever else.
Right.
I mean, he stole from everybody. He did not care who he took money from. He didn't care at all. And that's probably why, you know, these girls who did fall in love with him or whatever. I mean, it goes back to, what was it? There was a doctor in DuPage or something, wasn't there, that got ripped off for a cigarette boat?
Yeah, that's in like the 2003, 2004 time frame.
Yeah, and that was a relative of that was the father of a girlfriend or a wife, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, you're talking about, you're talking about his ex-wife.
Yeah.
I don't want to say her name. I know her name.
I don't want to say her name either. And I don't want to say the doctor's name because I'm sure she doesn't want to talk yet either. Or he doesn't want his name brought up if he's still around.
And that's an interesting story because not only did he get a boat from him, but when Dugo wasn't paying the mortgage on the boat as promised, the parents went to sell the boat. Unbeknownst to them, Rick had taken the boat over like late at night to his buddy's marina shop where he had him pull the motors. And these were like $50,000 motors, $80,000 motors, whatever it was. He parked the boat back at the parents' house, who had somebody come and take a look at it. They had no idea until somebody was there to buy the boat that it didn't have the motors in it. That Rick had pulled. I mean, that's what he's doing.
Yep.
He's chopping things up just to make some money. So This is a bigger question for you, you know, Detective Bill. Where is all the money?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
What do you think he's stolen?
Oh.
Give me an estimate. Throw it out there.
Oh, man.
Because I know what I thought. I told you it was between like $4 and $6 million.
Oh, way more than that.
4 to 5.
Way more than that.
No, that was my estimate in 2018.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, just to give you, I couldn't even guess.
Guess.
I couldn't even begin to guess.
Give me something.
I couldn't even begin to guess. It has to be. I mean, because first of all, I don't know all his victims. The victims that I know, the cases that I'm familiar with, and Tony would have a better grasp on this, way better grasp on this than me. But it's got to be well over $20 million.
Well over $20 million.
That'd be my guess. Over all the different 50, 60, you know, pay my rents, all the rents he's ripped them. If you count every rent and every $4,000, I'll double your money. And you go back into that, you know, and a $4,000 scam to Ricky was nothing.
No, I know.
You know, all the poor people who went in on these car washes with him, some of those people are at $600,000 and $700,000.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And he never worked, never had a job. The only way he made money that I can see was conning people.
Right.
He never, ever worked for a living.
So, I mean...
He did rip off a couple of the people that because I know they opened the car wash for about
2 weeks.
2 weeks and had a couple of guys working for him who ended up suing him for wages that he never paid him.
Yeah. And he also got sued by the guy that owned the lease on the land.
Right.
I talked to him.
So they're all... But if you start adding all of that up, you know, you're well into the $20 million. I'm guessing even higher than that.
It's unbelievable.
It could be higher than that. Well, if you were to go back and you found all the victims that he had since he was, like you said, when he graduated from
high school,
Amundsen or wherever he went to high school down in the city.
He went to Lane.
No, he didn't go to Lane Tech.
Not Lane Tech.
No,
I've got it somewhere. Yeah, I've got it somewhere. That's remarkable to me that, you know, let's just say your estimate.
It might have been Sen or Amundsen, one of those schools on the near north side.
But let's just say you're close to the
He
number.
lived in the 4400 block of Christiana in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's where his mother's house was. So that's where he grew up. So whatever high school district that is.
But that number, if you estimate over $20 million, I mean, again, I know it's an estimation. We're just throwing the dark here.
Yeah, could be way more than that.
So
when you figure how much his rent was at Dick Duran's house, how much was he not paying for that? How much, this guy over in Greg's Landing, he never paid a dime for that.
Yeah, that was.
And he lived there for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was a $3,000 a month rent.
It was.
Times whatever.
Yeah.
And
start adding all of that.
Start adding all that up. Start adding up all the extra money people had to pay for these loans that they took out for them for cars and motorcycles and boats and things like that. All the money they lost. You're well up into that range. And then, like I said, you don't know how many victims have never come forward. There are still people out there. If 10% of the victims came forward out of the 100 people, if 100 is 10% of his victims, I'd be surprised.
So that's what brings up an interesting point as well. I think that this podcast, paired with like a magazine article that's coming out. There's a magazine article coming out next month. This should get some traction. This should get some visibility, some media coverage. And I think that there'll be some people that come out of the woodwork that we've never known. At least that's
Hopefully.
a goal.
But again, if they come out of the woodwork and we'll know about them, but will they really have any traction to arrest him?
No.
To charge him with more cases?
I'm not.
I thought Dorothy Tucker's thing would get more people.
Yeah.
Channel 2 story. I thought she did a great job. She worked hard on it.
She did.
And I thought she would get more
traction. Yeah.
More traction on what happened, but I haven't seen it, and now maybe it could be that they're calling the state's attorney's office, and I've been gone from there since 2020, so Tony could be getting calls all the time. I don't know.
I don't think that that's happening. I mean, I think that they're good. He's in prison. I think that he may be somebody else's problem at some point.
Yeah, but I just wish that there was some way that someone would get involved from federally and go back and start. There's got to be a way to, even if it was the IRS, go back and all this money he's taken from people, never paid a nickel in tax, never filed his taxes, or if he did file, he filed that he made nothing, that could be the way he did it, and to avoid that hassle. But obviously that's a lie. And so what's the best way to,
stick it to him?
Yeah, I would love to see somebody just come in and just take everything and say, hey, here's the big picture. You're going, but I don't know that. That's not
so you really believe that there's this big picture, right?
Well, of course there is.
Yeah.
Of course there is. It's like a guy who robs grocery stores, or mini marts or whatever. He's not doing 10 in Waukegan. He might do one in Waukegan, then he'll do one in Pleasant Prairie, then he'll do one in Northbrook. And the combination doesn't always get made. The connection isn't always made there.
And that's purposeful because then
of course
most of these guys are super smart. They know that there's multiple jurisdictions.
Well, I don't know about guys who rob.
No, right.
But
yeah.
In Ricky's case, clearly he didn't give a rat's ass about. He would go anywhere to do anything to steal from people. It didn't matter if you were his neighbor, his mother-in-law, his sister. It could be all and everyone, because he never spent a day in any gainful employment that I could ever see.
Were you ever able to interview Ricky Dugo?
No.
You never got in front of him?
No. I don't know what happened. After I left, at the point that I left, no.
Did you see Ricky Dugo at the grand jury testimony? That was in late 2019.
I think Tony went. I did not go to that. We were doing other things. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tony and Fred went to that. I did not go.
Okay. Is there anything that I didn't touch on?
Not that I can think of. I mean, the only thing that, obviously, there'd still be a lot of people out there getting ripped off if you hadn't come to us.
I agree.
There'd still be a ton of people out there being victimized, and I think you saved a lot of people a lot of headache and a lot of angst, and you saw how devastated a lot of these victims were. If you hadn't come forward, if you don't come and have the tenacity, I guess, to come forward and say, this is coming, and then obviously the state's attorney's office under Mike Nerheim, we stood up for you. I mean, we did what needed to be done, even though it didn't go as fast as you wanted it to go, because these cases never do. I mean, we took it serious, where a lot of other agencies probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot there. If we don't see what's going on and take an interest, because Tony wasn't even. I don't even know if he was in the office when I interviewed the first time. We hired him after that.
Right.
He was there for the overhears and things like that, but he wasn't even assigned to the case till after the overhear, after the meeting in Vernon Hills that we had.
Let's touch on the overhear just for a second, because I just wrote 2 episodes about the overhear. Were you surprised that it actually was successful? Because it's that's something that isn't done every day in Lake County. I mean, maybe you saw that in Waukegan with Vice, drugs.
I've done a million of those. They don't always work. A lot of them don't work. A lot of them do. I mean, we've done lots of them. Not nearly a million, but we've done them. On murder cases and all kinds. Are they successful? Not as successful as that one. Sometimes some of them are great. Some of them work out terrific. I mean, you see the cases in the federal agencies where they have overhears and they got all kinds of information in theirs. So depends on the quality of the person wearing the wire, and if he can, if he knows, if he can get, he's not too scared to, to go up and do it. It worked out pretty well. That one worked out very well, and you did a good job.
No, I just wrote about it, and it's interesting because I don't know anybody else that's worn a wire, so I don't really have anybody else that to communicate with about what it was like. It's a really weird kind of thing, It's especially because I wasn't trading. I wasn't in trouble with the law. I wasn't trading, wearing a wire and being an informant.
Right.
To not go to jail for something.
Right.
So this was a voluntary thing.
You were just helping us gather evidence to make our case.
Yeah. So
and that was a very important piece, I thought. For the whole thing, and at the end, it worked out well, and it did. But we would have liked to have gotten something a little quicker, not over, charges quicker after that.
Sure.
It took forever after that.
Yeah. Would you say that Ricky Dugo is one of the most successful con men that you've ever seen in this area?
Well, I guess he's successful up until the point there's probably guys out there working right now who've never been caught. That might be more successful than Ricky, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But Ricky got caught. So hopefully that's a lesson to a lot of other people, but not all of them get caught. I mean, a lot of them are coming in, like you said, or like I indicated, when they're calling in from Bahamas and saying, we've got this insurance scam for you, if you do this, you won the lottery in the Bahamas, and I had some poor guy give up thousands and thousands of dollars to the Bahamian lottery scam. Those people aren't in jail.
Well, but those are also, and I understand, those are localized victims, but those are people that are coming from outside of the country, outside of the state. What I'm kind of referring to is,
as a local guy, he's probably one of the worst. He's definitely the worst in this type of case that I've ever seen. Yeah, absolutely.
Were you surprised at how far and wide his reach was? I mean,
was.
Again, I know that you talk about should have known better, what were you thinking? But I mean, if he could do this to me and 100 other people, he must have been really good at what he did.
Well, there's no doubt about that.
I mean, polished.
He was good at what he did, and he knew how to do it. That's all he did for his whole life. So I imagine he got pretty good at it. He went to jail one time, in Ohio. So
doesn't that strike you as crazy?
Yes.
That he could get away with all of it in Illinois? Because that's the whole premise behind this.
Well, Illinois and Missouri and everywhere else he went.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and that he would be able to get away with it. And like I said, it's good that we got to send him to at least a short time.
Yeah.
Where he can't victimize anybody, hopefully.
Yeah,
Unless he figures out a way to reach out from prison. Nowadays, who knows?
Yeah. He's in Vandalia, Illinois, in case you were wondering.
Yeah, I did not know. And like I said, once I retired, I was kind of out of it. And that's the way it should have been. Once you retire, you're done.
Yeah.
So I helped out a little bit, but hopefully, and then I think Tony and Kevin deserve the
They're some of my biggest fans.
all the work, all the credit, because they did a fabulous job.
They did. I owe them a debt of gratitude for sure.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping, I've been firing off a lot of emails asking them to do the same thing with me. Long and short is, a lot of it has to do with I would like to be able to look at them and say thank you. When everything was going down at the end, and all of a sudden the gavel's dropped, and he's carted away. And I'm in this hallway in Lake County in this court. I don't really even remember what happened because I was in such a state of shock. But yeah, I agree with you that they did a lot, and
they did a ton.
A ton.
I mean, you can't imagine the work that Tony put into this case, and Kevin. I mean, they put in a ton of work.
So you never heard about this case since after you left?
I never really kept, and honestly, to be honest with you, they shouldn't have talked to me about it. Once I'm out of the office, you're disconnected. That would be, I'm not unethical, but probably inappropriate for them to call me up and say, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? So, I didn't bother them to ask because, that I knew that once I was gone, it was over. My part. If they needed me to come back and testify to something that I did, I did go in and get interviewed to testify. I did testify in her trial, but the whole thing was Tony and Kevin and you. The victims. The victims are always the best witnesses.
Yeah. Do you miss it?
Not very often. I've been gone long enough now that I'm enjoying life too much to worry about it.
Yeah.
I do miss it, but everybody has to know when to hang up their spikes.
Yeah. Well, that kind of wraps it up here.
Good.
I really appreciate everything that you did from the onset. The first couple meetings through the million different places you went to. I really appreciate what you did. It meant a lot. It made a difference, and I'm really thankful. Thanks so much for.
Well, thank you for all you did. I mean, like I said before, if you don't come forward, there's people still getting ripped off by Ricky Dugo somewhere. Whether it's and that 20 million becomes 30 million, and there's all those other lives that are destroyed. You're lucky you didn't get hit that hard. In the big scheme of things, you didn't get the. You were nowhere near the biggest victim, but you were the most tenacious victim, and that's for sure. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think about that all the time. I got off easy, and most of that's been done, all of the hard work here, wasn't for me. It wasn't. This is like the last thing that I'd ever want to be a poster child for the guy that gets ripped off, right?
Right.
But if it can stop Rick Dugo from doing this one more time to one more person, or if it can open up other people's eyes that this does happen to successful, smart individuals all the time. People fall for things, and maybe it's just it's better to take a deep breath and think a little bit and ask yourself, is this real?
Yeah.
Because I didn't once think that it wasn't, and I'm a pretty sharp dude,
no doubt about it.
So I really appreciate it, Bill. Thanks a lot for your time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thanks,
okay.
Bill.
thank you for listening to this last episode of To Catch a Con Man in the Victim's Voices. Detective Bill Bain comes into the studio and provided us background and color of his time chasing Ricky Dugo, an adventure that took him to many states as he tried to gather up information to build this case. Detective Bill wishes someone with the feds would go through the files and potentially give Ricky Dugo another look-see, as in his opinion, Rick should have been a big enough fish for additional resources to look into, one of the most prolific and successful con men to ever live in the Midwest. Bill estimated the total amount Dugo had swindled to be over $20 million. Coming up next, we will meet with a victim that I consider to be a very good friend, one that I have never met in person, yet someone that has always provided me with information and encouragement. Sadly, he too is a Ricky Dugo financial crime victim.